Peter Simons wrote an article the other day for Mad in America, and the title of the article is, "For People at Risk for Psychosis, Antipsychotics Associated with Worse Outcomes." In the article, Peter goes over the results of a research study that were published in the Australian and New Zealand Journal of Psychiatry. The point of this video isn't to go over all of that, but I will quote the Mad in America article to give a preview of what those results were. From the article, quote, "The researchers found that antipsychotics were consistently associated with worse outcomes. Higher rates of conversion to psychosis were found in those who took the drugs, those who had multiple prescriptions, and those who took a higher dose of the drugs." Peter gives a more detailed summary of the results in his article, so I'd highly recommend you go check that out. Reading it reminded me of a number of things, but one of them was one of the first appointments I had with my psychiatrist back in 2008, when we actually discussed coming off psych drugs, of starting the taper. The antipsychotic Geodon was one of roughly a half dozen medications that I was taking at the time. And to quote again from Peter's article, "Antipsychotics are often used as a first-line treatment for those deemed at risk for psychosis." And this is something that I ended up having first-hand experience with, only with a slight twist on that experience that's relevant to coming off psych drugs. But quickly, it's worth mentioning just a brief little history of my antipsychotic use, which is kind of a weird way of putting it, and just kind of what led up to that. I first started taking antipsychotics for the treatment of obsessive compulsive disorder. Actually, scratch that. I started taking antipsychotics because I was hospitalized in a psychiatric hospital for truancy. That was the first time I was ever given an antipsychotic. It was Mellaril, which is a first-generation antipsychotic, old school. And it was horrible. It was a terrible experience. And it was just the punishment for not going to school. So, sounds fair, right? But I was soon prescribed a different antipsychotic for OCD. And I was 15 at the time. That's when all this started. So it was a wonderful age to start taking a chemical straitjacket. And it didn't help. I mean, long story short, it didn't help. I took antipsychotics for the next 10 years of my life, along with countless other medications. I was usually on a psych drug cocktail. And I took them for the next 10 years of my life until I started tapering off psych drugs when I was age 25. Full disclosure, I don't like antipsychotics. I don't like them. I have a special kind of borderline hatred for them. And there's a good reason for that. When I took them, I felt like they sucked all the life out of me. I think siphoned is a better word because it felt like the vitality was being taken out of me and given to someone else, maybe an industry, you might say. And I wish that was my story and mine alone, but it's not. It's countless people at this point who are experiencing the same thing, and countless young people, even worse, who are going through exactly what I went through or something very similar. And it's the worst thing to have the life sucked out of you before you can even really get started with your life. And I was struggling even before the medications and the psychiatrization. I was struggling, as a lot of people are, most people before they're medicated. But that does not excuse the harmful help that we received. It doesn't excuse it. After roughly 5 years of taking antipsychotics, I was diagnosed with a psychotic disorder. That would be schizophrenia. I was not having any of the positive symptoms of the disorder, the traditionally what you would call the psychotic symptoms. I only had the negative symptoms. So getting back to the conversation that I had with my psychiatrist, we talked about coming off all my medications. And because I'd been taking antipsychotics for so long, and because I had a diagnosis of schizophrenia, which he had given me, he said that there's a possibility that you could develop psychotic symptoms, that the medications have been preventing you from developing them. They've shielded you, however you want to put it. And that once you're off them, it'll be like blowing up the dam, I guess, and the waters will just come pouring in, the cray-cray waters. So that's kind of how he put it. And it was terrifying because I knew people who had hallucinations, and I saw how destructive it had been to their lives. But I think one important thing to add to that is that it was destructive to their lives possibly because of the medication. Many of the people I've known are not able to function. They're on so much medication, they don't even feel like getting out of bed. They can't. They have no energy. They have no vitality. They have no enthusiasm for life. And I was in a similar position, and I didn't have those symptoms. The one common link was the medications. We were just on too many. So ultimately, even though I was afraid, I didn't let that stop me. Again, looking even at just that example, I knew that, well, I don't have a life either way, So it's better to just forge ahead. So that happened back in 2008. That was our conversation, and it was terrifying. It scared me, but I kept going. So don't let that stop you. There are plenty of things that you can be afraid of, that you can be terrified of, that you can let get in your way, but don't let that be one of them, please. Now, whether you experience a psychotic break because you can't get help from healthcare professionals, from a psychiatrist while coming off your medications, now that's something else to talk about. That's its own thing. It's just tragic what all the system can do and get away with and have no accountability for. So that's all I have for this video. I hope you enjoyed it. I was just going to make a quick one about that article. Hang in there. And thanks for watching. This has been Russell B. I hope everybody's doing okay, especially during this really, really difficult time. So yeah, thank y'all for watching.